just like you imagined it, right? There's a lot of things that are worth carrying forward in our lives. And you take them from one season to the next season. A lot of things that are worth carrying with you, taking with you from one year to the next year. Good friends, good habits. Then there's also some things that we should probably leave behind. And we have a mark that we can say, not then, now. Things that are not worth carrying from one season to the next. Things that are not worth taking from one year to the next. And so for the next few weeks, we're going to talk about one of those things. Because one of those things that all of us should get in the habit of leaving behind are excuses. Excuses are flimsy obstacles like cardboard box walls. From a distance, they look like real obstacles. From a distance, they might even look impenetrable. From a distance, they look like we don't really have any choice but to do what we're doing, or to not do what we were not doing, or to not try again. From a distance, an excuse looks like an actual reason. Now, there's a reason, an actual reason, that I can't throw down a massive slam dunk. But there is no actual reason for me to not. Well, I don't know if I know you well enough to finish that sentence. But there are some things that I need to do that I have reasons for doing. But if you were to push a little bit, you might discover that my reasons aren't really good reasons. They're really just excuses. So excuses get passed off as reasons. And excuses easily become, in the real world, becauses. Because all of us have some becauses that we habitually hide behind. When certain things come up, you say, why don't you? And you go, well, because, why haven't you? Well, it's because, why don't you just keep doing that? Well, because, why don't you start? Because. Why don't you stop? Because. Why don't you just forgive her? Well, because. Why did you quit? Why did you stay? Why did you choose to leave? Why don't you just tell him? Why don't you just tell her? Because. Because. We've got becauses, excuses that pass themselves off as reasons, and then in our real world vocabulary, they become becauses. And there's actually a very fine line between a reason and an excuse. And one always disguises itself as the other. The way that we talk about excuses when we're talking about other people, it underscores this, and you know this. What do we say when we think somebody's making up excuses? We just say, hey, you're making excuses. In other words, you don't have any real reasons. You're just passing these off as reasons. And we hear, because. But the truth is, I see what's going on here. It's just you making stuff up. So we say to that person, hey, quit making excuses. You're fabricating things. You're inventing things. And again, the implication is those things aren't real. You think they're real. You're trying to pass them off as real. But I see what's going on here. And the implication is you're just making stuff up. You've created in your mind a cardboard box wall, and you're trying to convince me that it's actually a real wall. And what you're doing is you're dressing up an excuse in an attempt to pass it off as a reason. And isn't this true? We see this in our children like that, right? We see it in our grandchildren. It was so easy for our parents to see it in us when we were children living at home. It's pretty easy to see it in our employees. When they're doing it, it's pretty easy to see when that person across the counter is giving you policy. Even when a friend's doing it, your neighbor's doing it, your boss is doing it, we see it. This is so easy to see in other people. So some of you are thinking right now about who you hope will listen to this message someday. And you can totally do that. You can invite them. Tell them to come along, and we'll be able to go on this journey together. We hope everybody will recognize those aren't real reasons. Those are excuses that you're disguising as reasons. And we can spot an excuse in somebody else. We can spot it a mile away. We can't see it 6 inches away in the mirror. What we say is, the reason, the reason is, the reason, and what we almost never say, and wouldn't this be refreshing if we ever said it, instead of saying the reason is, well, my excuse is, I mean, wouldn't that be interesting? Wouldn't that be kind of refreshing? Because we would love to have your kids say that, or your wife say that, or whatever. Why didn't you finish your homework? Well, Dad, the excuse I will give you is, well, at least we'd be dealing with reality, right? Why are you late? Oh, yes. Well, it was my excuse is, what if we have nothing else, if you don't get anything else out of this series, what if we just start this new year by committing to stop disguising our excuses as reasons? What if we acknowledge that this isn't real? I've just made this up. And here's the challenge. Here's the question we're going to come back to over the next couple of weeks, because honestly, this is and is going to become emotional. It is possible, and I'm not accusing you because I don't know all about you. Is it possible? Are you at least willing to consider that perhaps some of your reasons, some of your becauses are actually just flimsy? They're actually excuses, something that you've created. And the thing is, you have a reason for why you created this box wall. Okay, the excuse is we present it as a reason. But there is a reason we make excuses, and if we ever get back to the source of our excuses, we'll probably drop some of those excuses or acknowledge that it's just an excuse for something. It's a flimsy wall. It's an excuse. And maybe yours are constructed of things that someone told you. Maybe something that somebody called you. Maybe there's something here that someone labeled you in the past. Maybe it's something that someone expected of you and you didn't come through. So now you're through that, and anytime that topic comes up, anytime that challenge comes up, it's like, oh, no. Because in your mind, I tried that and I failed. No. Just not going to do it. Is it possible? And I think this is true of all of us at some level. Is it possible you've invented reasons to defend certain behaviors, reactions, overreactions? Why do you always overreact? Well, I'll tell you why I always overreact, and then you present your flimsy box wall. Or whenever your mom or your dad, whenever you see them, you kind of just get fired up. You flare up when you see them come in. You go, why? Well, let me tell you why. And it's really just another flimsy cardboard box wall. But you've got a reason. Because we're rational people, we have to have a because. We can't say, why? I don't know. I have no idea. We say, it's all because, and it's because, and you know what? You probably wouldn't understand anyway. Is it possible you have created a flimsy wall or an excuse for why you procrastinate about certain things? Why you neglect certain things? Why you avoid certain things? Is it possible you've created a flimsy wall for why you avoid certain kinds of people, certain kinds of events, circumstances, opportunities? When I was in grade 7, I tried out for the soccer team. Up until that point, I had never actually played real soccer before in my life. I don't know why. I thought that I would like to be on that soccer team. I'd never played soccer. No idea. But I tried out. The early part of the tryouts were happening before school at 7 a.m. So I was in grade 7, and you had to be at the school before 7 a.m. You might already be seeing where this story is going. I did not make the final cut. I did not make the team. Now, I'm tempted to tell you why, because that's what we do, right? The reason that I didn't make the team, as soon as I say that I want to go, the reason is because I didn't make the team because there were so many other older students previously on the team and blah, 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 blah. But the point is, I didn't make the soccer team because I was not a very good soccer player. I just wasn't good enough. There, okay? I just said it. I just wasn't good enough. You got to get it out there. So what happened is I just started to not like soccer. Started pretty much right away. Soccer's a dumb sport. Because I wanted to be a soccer player and I failed. I couldn't be what I wanted. So it was just easier to not like soccer than to admit something about me repeatedly. So I'm going to ask you a question. This isn't the topic, but I just can't pass by this. Maybe this is why maybe you're watching today. Are there types of people you just don't like? Rich people, pretty people, people graduating, people not graduating, soccer players. Are there whole categories of people that you don't like? Because you should pay attention to that. Because you might think that it's them. It's not. It's you. And we're going to come back to that. So put a little pin in that. Look forward to that gem later on. Have you ever been in a place where you get invitations to things? And 100% of the time you go, nope, I'm busy. Nope, I'm busy. I can't. Lie. I would love to. Lie, lie, lie. I would not love to. The truth is, I would be so intimidated. I don't even know who you are. I don't even know the rules of soccer, okay? I would love to, but I'm too busy. Let me pass these opportunities off to some of my friends. Oh, you're so humble. It's just an excuse. I was intimidated. I was uncomfortable. Maybe you feel the same way. And here's something that's huge, okay? You know what's at the root of your excuses? This is not about you, okay? This is true of all excuses. At the root of an excuse is blaming something internal on something external. And this is so insidious. It's something that's wrong with me, but it's so hard to look in that mirror and admit it. So I decide it's not me, right? It's something out there. And the moment I decide it's something out there, I'm beginning to construct a wall. And I think that I'm protecting myself. I'm actually hemming myself in and keeping myself out of opportunities, maybe out of relationships, maybe better relationships because of something I just won't admit to myself. And you know what happens? I won't starts to sound an awful lot like, well, I can't. The truth is I won't, but I'm not going to say I won't. I just say I can't. I'm afraid to try. And that sounds like, well, you know what? That's not really my thing. That's just not me. I don't really care about that. And the truth is I'm afraid to try. But I'm not going to say I'm afraid to try. I'm going to say, you know what? That's just not my groove, not my thing. And after a while, this becomes my reality. Again, it is an excuse. It's a reason I've manufactured. It's a because that I hide behind and that you hide behind as well. Have you ever, because of some stupid, just lame-o, flimsy, fake cardboard box wall, missed out or almost missed out on one of the greatest joys of your life? Here's the point. We all have these. And here's the thing. Do you know what's on the other side of this flimsy wall? We don't know. We just think we know. And because we think we know, we're like, I'm too afraid. I don't want what's on the other side. It's not that big of a deal. I can't do that. I'm not talented enough. I don't have enough education to do that. I don't know anybody. Whatever. So is it possible? You got to think about this. Is it possible you're missing out because you've walled yourself in? Is it possible that a because is actually an excuse? and you don't accept these from your children, and you don't accept these from the people that you care about, you don't accept these kind of things at work, why in the world would we accept these things from the people in the mirror? And maybe most importantly, maybe you're already asking this question, why are we talking about this at church? Here's why, and this is so important. There is a relationship between your ability, not your willingness. I want to be clear about this. There's a relationship between your ability to follow Jesus and your willingness to push through your flimsy walls and to acknowledge that your reasons are excuses. Your becauses are actually excuses. And the reason I say that is because our excuses compete for the lordship of our lives. An excuse can become your king. An excuse can become your master. An excuse can become your boss because you know what excuses do? Excuses tell you what you can't do. You can't do that. You shouldn't try that. You shouldn't try that again. Oh, you should not talk to him. You should not apologize. You should not acknowledge that. You should. Shouldn't. You should. You shouldn't. And the next thing you know, your excuses are telling you what to do. You can't succeed at that. Somebody already tried. You remember? Do you remember what they said? Do you remember what they said about you? Do you remember what they said last time? And the next thing you know, your excuses are your king. They are sitting on the throne of your life. And if you're a Christian, you could spend the rest of your life singing hail to King Jesus and serving king excuses. And if you don't like the throne analogy, you can modernize it, right? It's the board of directors. Don't try that. Oh, no, no. You don't have leave to go talk to him. Do not talk to her. Don't show up for that. Don't go early. Don't let them know you're coming. Don't acknowledge that. Don't admit that. Don't admit you're wrong. There's a reason for it. Why? Well, because let me tell you what's on the other side of this. So I know the answer to this. You don't have to answer this out loud, okay? And I hope I'm not insulting anybody. But do you want excuses to be the boss of you? And I don't. And I'm pretty sure you don't either. But they will be the boss of us until we acknowledge they're not reasons and they are not real. Because they're just the becauses and the reasons we give. They're just excuses. We are making stuff up. And I want to be fair, there are reasons why we make things up. Okay? There is something behind why we make things up. There's something behind why something inside of me causes me to blame something outside of me. But either way, regardless of that, regardless of the reason, regardless of the cause, and regardless of the fact, if I heard your story, I would say, oh my goodness, yes, if that had happened to me, I have all kinds of flimsy walls. When it comes to relationships, when it comes to money, when it comes to sexuality, when it comes to any other topic, I get it. Goodness gracious. But in spite of that, you don't want excuses to be the boss of you. You don't want to get to the end of your life and look back and think, good grief, I spent my whole life behind this stupid wall that was nothing other than something that I made up based on what somebody told me, something that I believed, something that I heard, something that I read, something that I was afraid of, something that I just thought. So the Bible's divided into two big parts. You probably know that. Also divided into a whole bunch of smaller parts, but there's two main parts. There's the Old Testament and the New Testament. So in the book of Hebrews, that's in the New Testament. Another word for testament is covenant. So in the New Testament, or what we're saying is in the new covenant, under the new covenant, there's a book. Well, we call it a book. It's not really a book. It's an ancient historical document. And in this case, it's a sermon. And that sermon is known as Hebrews. So we don't know who wrote Hebrews. And in the document, or the book of Hebrews, The author is trying to get some Jewish Christians not to use the difficult time that they're going through as an excuse to quit following Jesus, because they were following Jesus. And they had hit some bumps, some very real bumps. There were difficult things going on, not imagined things, they were real things. And so the author was writing to them and saying, look, please, don't give up following Jesus because of these difficult things. It's not a good enough reason. And really what you're doing is you're just making an excuse. And in the midst of this conversation, in the midst of this document, there's given a general principle that whether you're a Bible person or not, whether you're a Christian or not, this is just great advice. And this is it. I know what's going on, right? I know you've got a reason for your reasons. I know that you've got a reason why you're manufacturing and fabricating these excuses. But let us, this is good, so memorable. Hebrews chapter 12, verse 1. Let us throw off everything that hinders. Let us throw. And as you think about the future and as you think about moving forward, you think about the rest of this next year, I want you to throw off anything that hinders you. This is it's a racing analogy. Anything that hinders you from running, from racing, from staying in your lane, from getting your feet moving, you just need to get rid of it. Rid yourself of every encumbrance. Rid yourself of anything that's an impediment, anything that trips you up, anything that slows you down, and the sin that so easily entangles. Now, if you used to be a Christian or you're exploring faith, what I'm going to say next is so important as you think about moving forward. And maybe if you've been a Christian for a long time, this will put some perspective in it for you, help you figure out how to live stuff. This word sin, if you follow Jesus throughout the Gospels, Jesus is very specific about what sin is. And he never, ever gives a list. He never says, here's 5 things not to do, all right? Here's the 4 things, don't do that. He doesn't do it that way. Do you know what was a sin for Jesus? So consistent. Sin was anything that hurt someone. Sin was anything that hurt someone, and sin was anything that hurt you. Which makes sense, because God so loved the world, and he loved the people in the world, that he doesn't want the people in the world to get hurt. And he doesn't want them to hurt each other. Just like a good parent. When you see somebody or do something to one of your kids, or you see one of your kids do something to a brother or a sister that hurts them, you are not upset because they broke a rule when they did that. You're upset because your child got hurt, whether there was a rule about that or not. And you'd say after that, from now on there's going to be a rule, but we don't do that because it hurt your brother, it hurt your sister. So anything that hurts another person, that's what sin is. And if you hurt yourself from God's perspective, who loves you, that's a sin. Lying is a sin. Lying is a sin because you know what it does? Lying breaks a relationship. You cannot have a real relationship with somebody who lies to you. Lying breaks relationship. And anything that breaks a relationship breaks God's heart, because God is all about relationship. So lying is a sin. And lying to yourself is a sin. Lying to yourself is a sin because lying to you hurts you. An excuse, if you want to look at it from this perspective, an excuse is really just a lie we tell ourselves about ourselves. I can't. I'm not good enough. An excuse is just a lie that we tell ourselves. We tell the person in the mirror about ourselves. And when we lie to ourselves, we hurt ourselves. And when we hurt ourselves, we sin against ourselves. So when the author says, I want you to get rid of anything that's an impediment to you running the race and the sin that entangles you, it includes this. Some of you have lied to yourself. You've got so many flimsy walls around you. And before this series is over, Maybe before this day is over. Maybe we've already gotten there. Some things have already come to mind. You have lied to yourself. You have hurt yourself. Which means, and this feels a little odd, but you owe yourself an apology. And when you go home, you need to look in the mirror and think about what you're doing, but apologize to yourself. You know what? I've been lying to you. I've been holding you back. I've been making up things and calling them reasons, but they're not reasons. Now I've got all these becauses, but I've been lying to you. I'm holding you down. And I'm not going to lie to you anymore, and I promise that I will never do it again. Because those aren't reasons. It's just stuff I made up. And I'm standing here behind all of this flimsiness, like I can't move forward. And it's because I believe in something, and telling me something this is just not true. So the author, he says, come on. Throw. This is great advice, Christian or not, right? Throw off everything that hinders you and the sin that so easily entangles you. In other words, no more excuses. And once you do, you are going to feel free. Back to that running idea. You're going to be free to run, freedom of movement. And once you do, and this is, you can always hear that music in the background, dun 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 dun. Chariots of Fire, you remember that? And let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us. And here's the fascinating thing, whether you're a religious person or not, again, it might determine how you interpret this, but if you're a Christian and you grew up with the notion that you believe in God and God has a plan for you, that's your race. That God has a will for your life, a will for your family, that you do something on purpose and you end up with purpose and you look back on your life and you feel like, hey, my life mattered. I'm going where God called me to go. The author's saying, look, I want you to run the race. There's a race that's been marked out for all of us Jesus followers. And there's a race that's been marked out for you specifically. And if you're not a Jesus follower, if you're not a Christian, you still got goals, right? You still got some mental picture of what could be, what should be for your future and for your family. And then the author says, look, don't lose that. Come on, don't lose your own race. Don't lose your own race because you blame things that really weren't even real to begin with. Would you just get rid of anything that holds you back so that you can at least run and complete the race that God has laid out for you, instead of just making stuff up? Now, I want to tell you what he says next before I show you what the author says, before I show you how he says it next, because this is a big idea. And it's easy to read over these things and not see them as big ideas, but when you're nerdy like me, everything becomes like this big idea, right? And so it's a whole message in and of itself, but we talk about this kind of stuff all the time, so I don't want to just keep going back and keep going back and back and back. So what he says next, that's so subtle, so challenging, he says, you need to quit focusing on yourself. Do what? He says, yeah, you need to quit focusing on yourself. If you live for yourself, you only have yourself to show for yourself, right? So great funerals, you know great funerals, right? There's so much to celebrate. We're always going, oh, geez, we just ran out of time. Do you know what a bad funeral is like? Nobody wants to speak for the deceased. Pastor Graham, we're going to give you the gift of the whole time. Go ahead, take all the time you want. We got nothing. I go, geez, I don't even know the guy, right? Doesn't matter, because there's not a lot to talk about, and we all just kind of want to get through it. People who build flimsy walls, and again, nobody does this on purpose, right? They get built over time. But people who build flimsy cardboard box walls and then live behind them, people who make excuses rarely make much of a difference. Have you noticed that? People who live behind their flimsy excuses and they make excuses, even though we when they tell us, we might buy their reasons. At the end of the day, they just rarely end up making much of a difference. Because flimsy walls keep you, and they keep me from being engaged. They make us small. They make us self-absorbed. And these flimsy walls rob you, and they rob others. They rob the people around you of you. And you're more valuable than you think you are. So here's a harsh reality. This is super deep. You may not agree with this, and that's okay. Excuses. All right? Not always, but maybe more times than we would like to admit. Excuses are often selfishness disguised as humility. Now, if you're not a religious person, again, not a Christian, or maybe you're exploring faith, but you're not quite there yet, I'm going to just drop you off right about here. Okay, you're certainly welcome to listen on the rest of the message, but I'm kind of going to leave you here. So between now and next time, don't miss next episode, just acknowledge, start looking for your flimsy cardboard box walls and decide you're going to throw off anything that gets in the way of you finishing the race that you have set before you, whether you think God has set one out for you or not. Because this is relevant for all of us. But if you're a Jesus follower, there's more. If you've decided that you want to follow Jesus, the author says, oh yeah, there's one more step. And many of you have heard this. You've heard this verse so many times. You've memorized it. You already know what the next words are. So let me just give you the whole thing. We're going to kind of run right through it. Let us throw off everything that hinders and the sin that so easily entangles, and let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us. No period, just the same sentence. Verse 2, fixing. This is a participle. As you go, fixing your eyes. Fixing your eyes on Jesus. Literally, looking away to Jesus. Looking away from the excuses. Looking away from the fears, the lack of opportunity, the lack of resources, the failure in my past, my bad upbringing, maybe even a disability. Looking away. Fixing our eyes on Jesus. And when you fix your eyes on Jesus, and we talk about following Jesus, when you choose to follow Jesus, you will eventually have to stop manufacturing excuses. If you really decide to follow Jesus, Jesus will lead you through these walls. And Jesus will expose those. If you follow Jesus, you will eventually have to stop manufacturing excuses. Because you'll eventually have to stop lying to the people around you and lying to yourself. We're going to stop hiding behind the why nots. I know this sounds a little hokey, but it's true. What if you began to ask why not yourself? So why not forgive? Why not initiate that conversation? Why not try it again? Why not sign up? Why not finish your education? Why not pay off that debt? Why not just be honest with her? Just be honest with him. Why not? And when you follow Jesus, he's going to lead you through all of this nonsense. And what was so scary, so crippling, what shut you down one minute, it's going to be an opportunity the next. Because he loves you. And you know this, right? The people who do the most good in the world are often the people who have the most real reasons not to. And those are the stories that we love. Oh my goodness, I mean, they didn't have flimsy cardboard box walls. They had actual, real reasons, daunting reasons, and just look at what they accomplished in the world. They just took what they had and they did something with it. And instead of spending all this energy coming up with becauses and reasons and excuses, they just did what they could do. And they ended up doing remarkable things. So why don't you be one of those people? You're a mom, be one of those people. You're a high school student, be one of those people. You're a married person, single person, young person, widowed person, single adult. Just be one of those people that decides, you know what? It doesn't matter what I have or don't have. I'm just not going to live my life behind a fabricated reason and an excuse. We're almost done. There's a relationship between our ability to run our race with endurance and our willingness, and it is willingness, and it's not ability, and our willingness to acknowledge that we're living behind flimsy walls. There's an undeniable relationship between your ability to become what you want to become and to fulfill your potential, whether it's spiritual or not. There's a relationship between that and your willingness to acknowledge excuses for what they are. And then for those of us who are Jesus followers, there's a relationship between our ability, not our willingness, our ability to follow Jesus, and our willingness to acknowledge an excuse for what it really is. Something that hinders us. So, whether you're a religious person or not, Christian or not, here's what we can all agree on. We all need to. Dramatic pause. We all need to shut down the excuse factory. We all need to get in the habit of saying, okay, the reason, stop. Okay, my excuse is, well, because. My excuse is, well, I've never been, my excuse up until now has been, because they just weigh you down, and they hold you back, and they rob you of potential, and they make you small, they make us all small, they make us self-centered, and we pass it off, or try to pass it off as humility, or just a misunderstanding, and some things are worth carrying forward season to season. Some things are worth carrying forward into the new year, and excuses are not one of those things. They need to be left behind. And if you choose to leave them behind, you'll be better off. And if you choose to leave them behind, your family will be better off. And your future family will be better off. And if we all decide to leave them behind, the world will be a better place, because we will be free to follow our Savior instead of saying no for reasons that are no reason at all. So let's shut down the excuse factory. And let's go ahead and move beyond the flimsy walls. And in episode 2, we'll start the process of telling you how. So don't miss episode 2 of Flimsy, moving beyond the excuses that hold you back. Heavenly Father, thank you for the reminder. Thanks for calling us out from behind the things that we hide behind. Father, we all struggle with this at some level. We all have different levels of insecurity. We all have fears. We've all failed at things. There's a failed relationship. It was financial failure. We tried. Somebody made fun of us. There's all kinds of things. And Father, we know it's kind of silly, but at the same time, we experience it as real, real, real. So give us eyes to see. Give us the courage to respond. And I pray that as a result of our time together today, as a result of our time together throughout this series, that we would move towards freedom to living the life that you have called us to live. And that we would model for this next generation what it looks like to punch through these flimsy cardboard box walls. In Jesus' name.